ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply.
So today we're with Taras at Top Shelf Aquatics, checking out their awesome algae farm. So, want to fill us in a bit on what you kind of do to culture it here? You got a pretty sweet setup going, so.
Well, I'm very excited. I was hired here at Top Shelf Aquatics to bring my algae knowledge to the forefront of the reef industry. We have here 3 domesticated algae strains that have been produced by a world of food aquaculture that we are now introducing to the world of reef. So we have here our Tetraselmis chewi. That's our green bread and butter, green phyto. This makes all kinds of nutritious compounds, but mostly good cholesterols that help things like corals and other organisms make very complex molecules that they might need. Here we have some golden phyto, some T. isochrystis lutea. This is great because, we all know how important krill and salmon oil is. Well, this makes it. All those other things are just gurried up and processed. This is the direct nanofactory that makes those golden fats. Everything that goes into everything, from a human brain cell to a fish skin cell, etc. And then down here, we all know that astaxanthin has many great qualities. It's a color enhancer. We know that's a good antioxidant. And then this is Rhodomonas salina, so it makes a similar pigment known as phycoerythrin. So it's essentially adding the building blocks of color to whatever you're feeding it to eventually scale up and enhance the overall color of everything from fish, corals, inverts, and the like.
That's awesome.
So what we're really trying to do here is, all of the reef industry traditionally has been based on extracting things from the wild, and now it's being realized that might not be the most sustainable way to go. So algae is the way that we create inorganic resources in the seawater and turn them into valuable biological compounds that we can use to breed everything from sea cucumbers to fish to copepods and then even corals. So, aquaculture, algae, that's what we're about.
That's awesome. Now you have so many different strains of it, which is awesome. And I know certain coral, like certain creatures, will only really thrive on certain strains.
Yes.
So it is really, there's definitely important to have that variety as well.
Every single color it looks like different colors to us, but realistically, this one is the size of a Volkswagen. This one is the size of the person that would be driving inside the Volkswagen. That drives as fast as the Volkswagen. This stays relatively sessile. All these different shapes, colors, they all mean dramatically different things. Think of them as tiny little factories making all the very important but necessary building blocks of life.
Oh, it's awesome. Now, if anyone actually is cultured, do you guys sell it, I'm assuming?
Yes.
With your massive amounts of this glorious algae?
Yes.
Now, a big thing is you can see with the science too, you do need to be very, very sterile to keep your culture going and not crash it. And that's a big thing too with like the biosecurity side of it and sterilizing.
Yes. So one of the things that I recommend for anyone trying to do some home algae culture is getting an electric kettle. They're not perfect. They are not the perfect sterilization agent, but if we're not working from raw seawater or working from artificial seawater, they will allow you to clean your water to the point where you can grow algae relatively successfely.
So is all the water in there, is it pre-boiled through the kettle before it goes into the vats?
Now the top cultures are flasks here. Those receive boiled water mixed in with a 2-part media. That keeps the algae sterile and its own strain. The carboys, because obviously we can't cook an entire carboy, are done with a bleach and de-bleach method. So just by getting some sodium thiosulfate crystals off Amazon.com and some bleach from the local hardware store, you can sterilize your water and make it so that essentially it's a shock and awe affair. You're blasting, you're destroying, you're eradicating, and then you're creating new with something purposeful. You're seeding it with the purity that you know that you have because you have kept it sterile from the beginning.
That's awesome. Now, I know when I used to culture phyto back in the day, like every 7-10 days I'd have to split it or else the culture would crash.
Yes.
Is it similar with all the different algae?
It is similar, but there are some fascinating nuances. So all algae has a lag period where it's kind of getting started, it's a little bit faded out, it's weak, it's getting itself started. A log period of growth where most of its biomass is being accumulated and it's getting darker, and then a stationary phase of growth where you don't get necessarily too much more cells, but the cells start doing fascinating things. Like T. isochrystis lutea, for instance, will start massively stockpiling all those fats. All of a sudden it's like, oh, we're all here. There's only going to be so many resources for the future. Let's start stockpiling those fats. So when you get chocolate milk level algae, when you get thick green St. Patrick's Day algae, that's when you're really entertaining the algae's ability not only to make these good things, but then stockpile them. So you're essentially just delivering a giant pillow full of nutrition.
Love it. Now, I know if you're doing pods of filter feeders, you know, baby clams, like there's definitely a lot of advantage to feeding the live algae. Now, out of curiosity, because I know they do get dosed to some of your amazing systems here, like have you noticed any difference in the coral from dosing algae to the systems?
We have noticed increased feeding responses when it comes to a lot of the corals. And what we're also very excited for is the fact that we're able to use this algae to grow so many different copepods, moina, and rotifers, so that all these things, phytoplankton and zooplankton, can be dosed at the same time. That way an entire ecosystem is being delivered to the reef, so that even if a coral isn't necessarily consuming an algae cell itself, it's consuming all these different invertebrates that themselves would only have so much nutritional value, but they themselves have become these mega pillows full of all those nutrition.
So you're basically getting all the fatty acids, everything in the phyto, which you're feeding to the copepods, the rotifers, all these little crustaceans, so essentially gut loading them.
Yes.
Those get eaten,
Yes.
and again, you're getting all those nutrients, all that good stuff into whatever's consuming it.
And that's what happens in the wild. The tide comes in, the tide comes out. It is not sterile water which is delivered to the reef. It is this bounty, this smorgasbord of eggs, krills, copepod, and phyto. That's what the aspiration we're working towards.
Yeah, love it. Super cool. Thank you so much for the tour.
Thank you.